Audio recording for this meeting has begun.
Hello everybody and welcome. My name is Jonah Begay with the Behavioral Health Center of Excellence, and this is the Domestic Violence Prevention Program Series, and today's topic is on Family Wellness Warriors Initiative, and we're joined today by many presenters. In the upper left-hand corner of the screen, if you have any questions or comments, please let us know in that box just right there. This will be mainly for the presenters. In the lower left-hand corner of the screen will be for technical assistance. If you're having trouble seeing the slides or you're having trouble hearing the audio, please let us know in that box just right there. Joining us in the background is Elena George and Mary Toledo, and we'll help you out as best we can. Very lower right-hand corner of the screen is the Files for Download box. That's today's presentation in a PDF format, and you can download that at any time during the presentation just by clicking on the title that you see there. It'll highlight blue. From there, the Download Files button at the bottom of that box will become available. Click on it. It'll take you to a new window, a new tab, and then you can follow the prompts from there. Some upcoming dates for this series: August 23rd, September 27th, October 25th, November 21st, and December 6th. All these events will have their own registration links, and they are in the green just right there. So just because it doesn't necessarily mean you register for them all. Each date will have its corresponding registration link, and we'll have this up at the end of the webinar as well. And with that out of the way, I'm going to go and turn things over to our presenters.
Jonah, before we turn it to the presenters, can I say something a little bit?
Yes, please go ahead.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Selena Karaiti, and I am the National Domestic Violence Prevention Coordinator here at headquarters in Rockville, Maryland. And I just want to say thank you for participating in the monthly Domestic Violence Prevention webinar session. These domestic violence program webinar sessions provide a platform for collaborative learning, and each webinar includes a presentation from a domestic violence prevention initiative funded by the Indian Health Service. Projects cover their activities. They highlight traditional practices, evidence-based practices, or promising practices. So these are just some of the items that they provide. They also provide an overview of their program as well. And then just wanted to add that the National Domestic Violence Prevention Program has 75 Purpose Area 2 projects and 8 Purpose Area 1 projects. My apologies, 75 Purpose Area 1 projects and 8 Purpose Area 2 projects. So we have a total of 83 projects in the country. Today's webinar sessions will be presented by Alexis Colbert-Nielsen, I hope I pronounced the name right, and Marcel Bergen. And they're both from South Central Foundation from the Alaska area. So please welcome both Alexis and Marcel, and thank you.
Hello, thank you. Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are. Yeah, I'll let Alexis introduce herself first.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Alexis Colbert-Nielsen. I was born in Seldovia, Alaska, which is located on the southern tip of the Kenai Peninsula. My parents are the late John N. and Alta Colbert. My grandparents are John and Eliza Colbert, Leslie Rosenbush, and Joseph and Alta Hennington. I'm Athabascan, Norwegian, Scottish, Irish, German, and Dutch. I'm married. I have 2 daughters, 5 grandsons, 2 granddaughters, 1 great-granddaughter, and 1 grandson on the way. I've been with South Central Foundation for 25 years, and I've worked with Family Wellness Warriors Initiative for 6 years as their administrator, and we have been grateful to receive the IHS funding since 2010 for our program.
And my name is Marcel Bergeron. I was born and raised here in Anchorage, Alaska. My family's originally from Southeast Alaska, and they're Tlingit descent. And my mother's from Vancouver Island, Canada, and she's Cowichan descent. And I've been with South Central Foundation for about 11 years now, and with Family Wellness Warriors Initiative for about going on 6 years now. And today I serve as a Learning and Development Associate for the training team. So, a little bit about South Central Foundation. Our vision is a Native community that enjoys physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual wellness. And our mission is working together with the Native community to achieve wellness through health and related services. So our program really focuses on the mental, emotional, and the spiritual aspect of wellness. And also, as far as our mission, we're really intentional about connecting with individuals and families and communities across Alaska. Let's see here. So the objectives for this presentation is we want to recognize the purpose and goal of Family Wellness Warriors Initiative, or we just call it FWWI for short. Examine how the FWWI process addresses root issues and not just the symptoms. And also understand how we use the power of story and how we incorporate that in our trainings. And then also we're going to look a little bit at the Beauty for Ashes process and the training and what that looks like in detail. So something that we always say for this presentation is just a little notice. We are going to cover some heavy material. It's not always easy talking about domestic violence and abuse and neglect. And we are going to share some personal stories.
So what is breaking the silence? When we talk about breaking the silence, we mean telling your story and bringing your important stories to the surface. Here at FWWI, we don't just talk about the symptoms of the problems like the drugs or the alcohol. Instead, we address the root issues of the problem, and those start at our early stories. For many years here in Alaska, our people were told to keep quiet about the harm that was being done to them. Now, more and more people are beginning to break the silence by bringing their childhood stories to the surface, and they're beginning to talk about these.
So the goal of our program is to end domestic violence, child sexual abuse, and child neglect in the state of Alaska in this generation. And we understand that sounds like a huge goal to accomplish, but we really believe by working with individuals and communities that this can happen. And already we've had over 12,000 participants who have been through our trainings, who have been through our program, who are starting to break the silence. So for me personally, it's been a really awesome movement to see take place in Alaska. So one of the ways we accomplish this goal is we hold numerous trainings throughout the year. We are a training and education program, and we also hold weekly learning circles, and we also hold gatherings that support this movement.
So Family Wellness Warriors Initiative was created by and continues to be led by Alaska Native people. And we are thoroughly grounded in Alaska Native traditional values. And our elders are leading the way, and by doing so, they're giving permission to break the silence by sharing our stories. We lost our voice at one point. For many generations, we've been told not to talk about it. Today, we're breaking the silence. I attended my first Beauty for Ashes in 2004 in Fairbanks, and it was the best training I had ever attended and the first time that I had ever shared my childhood story in a safe place. And I carried my story for over 32 years prior to sharing.
And one question that we get pretty often is, what makes your program so effective? And I think one key component is that our elders are leading the way and giving permission. Excuse me for just a second. And I know that was a key component for me when I first went through a training is I saw an Alaska Native elder, Mel, who not only shared about how he's been harmed, but how he's caused harm. So for me, that really just gave me the permission when I first went through the training for the first time to visit stories that I never bothered to visit in my life before. So now we're going to go over some statistics, and we realize that many of you are probably familiar with these statistics. And the reason why we go over these is to kind of paint a picture of what we're currently facing, especially specifically in Alaska and across Indian country. But this slide here shows what we're facing nationally, and it says that 1 in 4 women and 1 in 7 men suffer serious physical violence at the hands of an intimate partner at least once in their lifetime. And then 3 women in this country lose their life in this country due to domestic violence. And then unfortunately, the stats for Alaska and Alaska Native people are even more staggering. It says that more than 84% of Alaska Native and American Indian women have been physically assaulted in their lifetime. And Alaska ranks first in the nation with the highest homicide rate for female victims of DV. And then also in Alaska, it says that 50% of women will experience intimate partner violence, sexual violence, or both. For sexual assault, during the last 25 years, Alaska ranked within the top 5 states in the nation for forcible rape, and for 18 of those years, Alaska ranked number 1. More than half of Alaska Native and American Indian women will be raped in their lifetime. And I know every time I read over these and look over these, I get emotionally stirred. Because I know for many of us it hits home. And one thing that we say here when we do this presentation is, even though we're reading off a lot of numbers, a lot of these numbers have faces to them. There's our own family members, people that we work with every day. And for child sexual assault and abuse, it's almost 6 times the national average. It goes on to say that 1 in 6 boys and 1 in every 4 girls will be sexually abused in their lifetime. And this last stat here is interesting. It says that in the past decade, reports of maltreatment have increased 107% in Alaska, with close to half of those reports of abuse and neglect substantiated. So that last one there is actually encouraging, because it shows that more people are starting to report, more people are breaking the silence in Alaska.
The Adverse Childhood Experiences, or ACEs, in a study that was conducted by the CDC and Kaiser Permanente, over 17,000 participants, they discovered that the ACEs are directly tied to long-term health and social outcomes. And through this study, they were able to see how early childhood trauma is connected with long-term effects such as alcoholism, emphysema, cancer, and other health and social disparities. There are 10 childhood ACEs listed, and out of these 10 ACEs, if you've experienced one ACE, then it nearly doubles the risk of perpetrating domestic violence as adults. And if you have taken this short test and identified with any of these ACEs, 4 or more of them is associated with 5 times greater risk for domestic violence as an adult. And I personally, when I took this test, can identify with 4 of these ACEs. And after attending Beauty for Ashes and staying in the process, I can see the direct correlation between the ACEs I identify with and why I had 2 marriages that ended in divorce. So it helped me to be able to connect the dots. It goes on to say that exposure to one type of ACE will increase the risk of suicide attempts by 2 to 5 times, and exposure to 7 or 8 ACEs increase the risk of suicide attempts by 51 times during adolescence and 30 times in adults. We also look at health-related and what that does when it's correlated with the ACEs studies. And individuals with a history of multiple ACEs, physical and or sexual abuse and or domestic violence, 4 or more had nearly twice the rate of cancer. And cancer, as a lot of you know here in Alaska, it's one of the leading causes of death among our Alaska Native people since the mid-1990s. It also accounts for 1 out of every 5 Alaska Native deaths. There are a few more statistics that continue to show how the early childhood trauma and long-term health effects are directly related. Experiencing complex childhood abuse increased risk for heart disease by 3.6 times, and a history of childhood neglect more than doubled the risk of adult diabetes. 5 or more ACEs increase the risk of using illicit drugs. These continue to show us how early childhood trauma and long-term health effects are directly related.
So all that to say that, our stories are so important. What we experience early on in life is so important and could have huge impact on us later on in life. So one of the questions that we pose is, can those effects be reversed? Specifically, can those effects be reversed by having a safe place to share our stories? So that's one thing our program does. It creates that safe place for us to talk about those difficult stories, those stories of how we've been harmed and those stories how we've caused harm. And we're also calling out the warriors. We're calling out the men to take back that traditional role as a protector of the family. And it's no secret that statistically, men are responsible for most of the abuse that happens in a household. But we want to shift that focus from seeing men as part of the problem to seeing them as part of the solution. So our program is calling back the men to be the protector of the family. So when we first started our trainings back in the early 2000s, we only had about a 3% male attendance rate. But we're proud to say that as of recently, the men have started to respond in Alaska, and now our numbers are up to about 47% male attendance rate for our trainings. And also, we're calling out the women to walk alongside men as equals when instilling those family values.
So part of what we do with creating a safe environment and being able to share our stories is we look at the root issues. We look below the surface, and we also provide the tools to help deal with unresolved wounds. We focus on if you look at this picture of the tree, it's like pruning to get rid of something, and you don't just prune to prune. It actually helps your tree grow. So the root issues are the childhood harm, and the branches are the impact of what happened in childhood and how it plays out as an adult. We are distinct from other organizations because we also work with those who have caused harm. You know, if you put a hospital at the bottom of a cliff and only help people when they fall off the cliff, then we're just being in reaction mode or reaction oriented. If, however, you want to truly make change, you have to work with both those who have caused harm and those who have been harmed. Everyone who comes through our trainings looks at how they are harming others, and in doing that, our work is modeling how to connect the dots. And for me, I understand how everything I have experienced from the day I was born to where I stand today impacts how I relate to others. The cycle of harm, numerous studies have shown that generational patterns of parenting exist, and approximately 30% of abused and neglected children will later abuse their own children. For me, I grew up in a house with 5 siblings, and Mom, when she would get upset or frustrated, she would yell at us kids, and to this day I do not like to be yelled at. And I didn't realize it until after I went to my Beauty for Ashes that my husband, he has a gruff, gravelly voice, and when he's upset or something would happen at work, he'd come home and we'd try to talk, and he'd be raising his voice. Well, it triggered me, and I'd yell back. So I was able to connect the dots and realize that, whoa, you're being triggered. Just stop. Don't say anything. And I'd say, Frank, please lower your voice, or I'm going to walk away, and I'll come back in 10 or 15 minutes, and we'll try this again. And so over the years, that has become less and less and less to where that's not an issue anymore. But it's incredible how going through training helps you to realize and to be able to connect dots for your story.
All right, so we apologize. We usually have a 4-minute video to show people in this presentation, but we didn't have it ready this time around. But if you want to later, we invite you to go to YouTube and search Family Wellness Warriors Initiative, and there you could find our videos that we share. And I'll just say one thing that's said in the video that I really relate to is when a man says that, I just knew I had so much stored up inside that I needed to let out. I just needed someone to show me how to how to let it out. And for me, I really related to that because I grew up in a home with a lot of domestic violence, experienced a lot of neglect, physical and emotional, and then also experienced childhood sexual abuse. And I think the way that I kind of coped with that is really withdrawing from people, isolating myself, just being really quiet, really shy. And I kind of kept that pattern throughout my childhood into my early adulthood and never really knew the why behind it. It wasn't until I went through the training that I was able to connect those dots, like Alexis was saying, and share my story for the first time in a safe place. And when I was able to share my story, for me it just felt like 1,000 pounds was lifted off my chest. And I think a lot of that was a lot of shame and guilt that I was holding on to. And I never really had a chance to let go of that shame and guilt until I was able to talk about my story. So for me personally, it was a really big step forward in my own healing journey, and really opened the door on connecting those dots from childhood to where I'm at today, and having those aha moments of, oh, no wonder I'm behaving this way, or oh, no wonder I struggle in this specific area. So research actually shows that adults who remember and tell their story in a full and honest way are unlikely to repeat generational abuse. And I found that so true for myself, that when I told my story in a full and honest way, I was able to recognize those unhealthy patterns in my life and start to work on those.
For me, I wish I would have taken a picture of myself on the first day of Beauty for Ashes. I was nervous and didn't know what to expect. And then on Friday after the last session to take a picture of what I looked like, and it would have been like, wow. It was like 1,000 pounds were lifted off my shoulders, and talk about being set free. I was able to share parts of my story in a non-judgmental place that was safe, and hearing for the first time it was not my fault. I came out of that training with a map. It's called My Action Plan, and being able to have an action plan to take home after the training, and it gave me hope for a better future.
All right, so now we're going to shift into the details of what our trainings look like and kind of the program evaluation behind our program. So FWWI holds numerous multi-trainings per year, as well as weekly learning circles and gatherings. So our main training you see there is Beauty for Ashes, or we call it BFA, and Arga House. And those two are the same curriculum, except for BFA we hold those in Anchorage, and for Arga House we hold those in different settings, different cultures around Alaska. And for Arga House, we adapt the training depending on where we're holding it. And this is a 5-day intensive training, and we train natural helpers to address the issues of domestic violence, abuse, and neglect. And we also work with the Department of Corrections and offer reentry support. And for people interested in learning to become a group leader, we offer advanced leadership, education, and training. And then, like we said, we offer daily learning circles and support for veterans. So this slide shows a bird's eye view of what the week looks like for Beauty for Ashes, our Arga House. So we have 4 stages of group during that week. So for the beginning stage, as you see on the top, that day is really focused on building safety. So there, the group will meet their group leaders and get a feel of what the training is like. They cover some important boundaries, one of them being confidentiality. So everybody agrees that what's shared in group stays in group. And then later on we go into the story stage. And the story stage is really focused on creating that safe place for people to share a story. Time is really protected for each participant and invites them to share a story. So no one is ever forced or pushed into sharing. It's very invitational, and our curriculum is really designed to invite people to share. And then about midweek, you see how that line takes a dip there, and that represents the emotional dip that people tend to have. And that's because we're going into the working stage. And the working stage is really focused on the here and now, how participants look at how am I currently showing up in relationships, how have I impacted myself, and how have I impacted others. And then by the end of the week, we go to the closing stage, and that's really focused on what does hope and change look like. So I just been through a powerful week of sharing story. Now what? So one of the modules in that closing stage is my action plan, and participants develop an action plan for themselves. Maybe they want to seek counseling, maybe they just want to exercise more, or maybe they just want to connect with support groups. Whatever wellness looks like for them, they could develop that, and they could have that accountability for themselves. So also what the training looks like is we have large group teachings, and these are 30 to 45 minutes depending on the session. And there we have trained presenters who share their personal stories and teach the topic. And then we have 11 sessions throughout that week. So just some examples there is breaking the silence. That looks like how do I safely enter my story? What does it look like to break the silence in my story? Longing for mom and dad. Participants have a chance to examine, what was the impact of my mom and dad or the lack thereof. Also, we look at the cost of shame. How does shame impact us? And then also, one of the up and out modules at the end of the week is Bridge to the Future, and that helps participants enter regular life. They've just been through a really intense training, and then they're going back to their everyday normal life, and it really equips them for that. So after the large group teachings, they break into their learning circle experience. So there we have 2 trained group leaders and 6 participants. So those small groups aren't large by any means. They're very small, intimate, and very covered by the group leaders. And these sessions last for about 90 to 120 minutes, depending on the session. And participants explore the topic and how it ties to their personal story. So through the day, it goes back and forth between the large group and then the learning circle experience.
So we have tiers of safety for our trainings. And all of our trainings, they're not just meant for every individual, so there is an application process. And we have a clinical team who follows strict pre-screening guidelines, and that ensures we adhere to best practices. And what our clinical training specialists review and assess the appropriateness for each one of the participants based on the screening questionnaire. All of our trainings are intense, and they require participants to be fully focused. So if we have somebody who is screened out, then our clinical team works with them to do referrals to whether they need to go into counseling, or maybe they need to attend some learning circles prior to attending a Beauty for Ashes. So they take care of doing those referrals. We also provide on-site lodging for all of our participants and group leaders. The next tier of safety is our group leaders. They're the first line of defense, if you will, when it comes to keeping groups safe. They are natural helpers just like you and I, and they've been trained to facilitate small groups. They've attended our Beauty for Ashes. They've also attended Elite, and they help facilitate the small group, and they participate as well. And they model by sharing their stories first, and they also model on how to respond. Because we take safety and confidentiality, it's very, very important to us, so that we continually have our learning circle agreement available and cover that again as needed in group. The group leaders work with all of the participants, and they help to keep the group safe. We each have a care team. When we're group leading, we're assigned a care team member. That's the next line of defense, and each care team is assigned to 3 or 4 groups, and they have the opportunity to go into group once or twice during the 5-day training. They share a part of their story, which helps keep the group safe. And they're there just in case there's differences in group and the group leaders are struggling. Care team will go in and help assist them with that process to move through being stuck. Then we have individualized care that's available, and these are our master's level and PhD level clinicians who are available 24 hours a day for anyone who is struggling with processing a portion of their story. They have access to care team, individualized care, to go in and speak one-on-one. And then care team and individualized care work with the participant to get them back into group. When our trainings are completed, we do follow-up. So within 2 weeks of the training ending, we call each one of our participants and check in with them and see how they're doing. We also do follow-up surveys, and they're mailed out 6 months and 12 months after the training.
So, like we said earlier, we work with the Department of Corrections, and we have built relations with the Department of Corrections here locally in Anchorage. And we work with some of the inmates out there, and we hold ARGA houses. So we hold the same training for the inmates, and they have a chance to participate and share their story and learn tools on building healthier relationships. And then also we offer aftercare trainings for those inmates. So after we hold at ARGA house, we'll go back 2 times to hold aftercare trainings for them. And then we also offer learning circles with them 2 times a month as a way of aftercare support. And then also we offer re-entry support. So after they graduated and completed that program that they're in, and they're re-entering society, and they serve their time, now they're coming back out. So we offer that re-entry support and connect them with resources, and we give them a little care package too, with like bus passes and socks and shirts and practical things that will help them re-engage into society.
So our participants, while they're attending our trainings, they will learn how to share their stories, and they learn from one another. We also gain tools to strengthen family relationships. We learn how past experiences impact how we relate to each other today. We find hope, support, and we build community. I know 18 months after I attended my first Beauty for Ashes, I decided, as hard as it would be to attend our advanced leadership education training, I would do it and tie my personal story to one of the teachings if it would help one person in the room to be set free like I was when I attended Beauty for Ashes.
I know one of the biggest benefits for me personally is finding my voice. Like I said earlier, I was really shy, quiet, and didn't know how to articulate what was going on inside of me. But this training really helped find my voice and gave me the ability to articulate things that I normally wouldn't. And also, I really feel like it really helped strengthen my relationship with my wife and I. My wife went through the training, and now I feel like we could have just really open, honest conversations with each other, and we have those tools to do it in a healthy way. So one way we replicate this process in other areas is we offer the 4-phase model. So you'll see a map of Alaska there, and that's broken up into different regions. And we work with regions to train the communities in this process. So the first phase is when we engage a community. We never just go to a community uninvited, but we want to make sure that we're formally invited by the tribal leadership and the healthcare system in that specific region. So when we engage a community, we're also looking for those natural helpers to start training. And once we engage a community, we go to phase 2, and that's when we form a steering committee in that region. So they're the people that live in that region, they're the experts, and they start to go through our trainings to eventually go to phase 3 and implement learning circles and trainings in that area. And then by phase 4 is when we like to see the transition and sustain, that region is owning the process for themselves. They adapted it for their culture and region, and we're just there as shadow and support.
And I'd like to add on phase 1, when we do engage a community, once we've been invited in by tribal leaders, we conduct community awareness workshops, and we also do community readiness surveys.
Yeah. So we've actually worked outside of Alaska as well. When one region that did this really successfully recently was in Ontario, Canada, with the Anishinaabe tribe. They took this process and just ran with it, and now they adapted it for themselves, and they're holding Beauty for Ashes several times a year now, so it's been pretty cool to see them do that. So we talked about Advanced Leadership Education and Training, or ALEAT, and this is also a 5-day workshop if someone was interested in learning how to safely facilitate learning circles. So this workshop provides tools and techniques to help facilitate. And then also we offer CEUs and college credits through Alaska Pacific University if anyone was interested in that.
So at South Central Foundation, we have started learning circles, and this was a core part of our behavioral health services redesign when they recognized that there was folks on wait lists trying to get in to be seen. And also we noticed at Family Wellness Warriors Initiative that we had a really long wait list for participants because we only hold 2 Beauty for Ashes a year. So South Central Foundation created learning circles to help folks get into small groups to be able to share that have commonality, something they have in common with one another. So small groups started across our campus. They help build relationships by sharing story, provide referrals to other services. We learn from one another and provide support. And the focus is on some of the specific issues that the learning circles look at are grief and loss, recovery support, anxiety, healthy boundaries. We currently have 95 learning circles being held across the ANMC campus. And if you're in Anchorage, I'd like to invite you to check out one of our learning circles or come to Wellness Matters Night. We hold that every Thursday night. From 5 to 6 is dinner, and then there are learning circles from 6 to 7:30, and there are 10 different learning circles to choose from. And they're held in the building where we currently work out of, 4085 Tudor Center Drive. So there are 10 learning circles that you would have opportunity to attend. Soldier's Heart was birthed out of Family Wellness Warriors Initiative, and the curriculum was developed and written by veterans with the goal of reducing the symptoms of post-traumatic stress and aid in suicide prevention among veterans, first responders, and their families. And some of their topics include survival, guilt and shame, grieving and loss, the impact on our loved ones, finding memories, and forgiveness. They also hold 2 trainings per year, and they're actually in training this week. So our program evaluation is one group pre-test, post-test design. Our surveys consist of multiple standardized measures. There are 4 surveys that are done pre-training right after registration, and then after the last session on the 5th day, there is a survey, and then we do 6-month post and 12-month post. They're scored by measure and they're tested for statistically significant change. So through the collection of the pre-training baseline measures and 6 and 12-month self-reported post-training data, FWWI is able to monitor and evaluate program impact over time. And we've done this since May 2011. So the quality of life dimension measures the extent to which certain mental or behavioral health conditions like depression, substance abuse, trauma and anger control, risk or harm, anxiety, how they may be adversely impacting one's quality of life. And the protective factor dimension measures several protective factors: family cohesion, cultural connectedness, self-esteem, spiritual well-being, and that can help promote personal resiliency or mediate the effects of risk factors. When you look at the personal growth dimension, the measures the development of key skills and abilities essential to facilitating personal growth, and they include specific FWWI curriculum-based competencies, sharing story, listening and responding, relational style, emotional honesty, and impacts of historical experience. So this is the overall average of all the participants who have attended a Beauty for Ashes. And it's statistically significant positive changes at 12 months on the standardized measures. If you're looking at spiritual well-being, it's 8.7% improvement after the training, 7.5% for self-esteem, family cohesion 4.9%, and then cultural connectedness at 4.3%. This depicts the breakdown between the male and the female, and as you can see by the graph, the men show a little higher percentage of change. So for self-esteem, the men were showing 71% and the women 59%. For the family cohesion, male was at 51%, female at 48%. Cultural connectedness, 61% for male, 55% for female. And then with our spiritual well-being, the males were at 74% and women at 68%.
So for me, I just find it really interesting how much it impacts the men when they go through this training. And for me, it just really goes to show how much not only men and women, but specifically men, how much we need this process. Because I know for me, it wasn't normal for me to share how I feel or to be in small groups and, you know, to talk openly and honestly about, you know, my feelings and experiences.
So from the baseline to 12 months, the overwhelming majority of men and women both show reductions in trauma, symptomology, and depression. Around a third show reduced anxiety. 47% of the participants show no unhealthy substance use pre or post. Of those who do, 77% show a decrease at 12 months. So there's slight differences between men and women, but these differences are not statistically significant. So we look at quality of life and the average of all participants in reduction of trauma symptomology, depression, substance abuse, and anxiety. And these are statistically significant changes at 12 months on the standardized measures. So this was created by focus groups, and our data person held focus groups with BFA participants and also group leaders. And what you're looking at on this pyramid, on the left is what leaders do, and on the right is what participants experience. And the pyramid itself shows the outcome. So if you start at the bottom left, leaders share their story first, This is done in large and small groups, and this helps to build trust in a safe environment as well as help participants to break silence and ultimately heal the core wound. We teach healthy responding, and participants are able to reject shame messages, and self-esteem and self-efficacy is strengthened. So then we build healthy relationships, and this model relational styles including healthy conflict resolution and difficult conversations. And in the end, those who attend become helpers to pass on the courage and the strength that they have found to play it forward. Because we have a closed health system, we're able to pull health system visits for participants for 6 months pre- and post-training periods. The post period after a 3-month transition period, we used a propensity-matched comparison group to look at health outcomes, and the two groups were balanced on pre-period healthcare utilizations as well as health status. When we compared the control, FWWI participants had a 38% reduction in total post-visits and 55% reduction in post-emergency department visits and a 79% reduction in post-substance use visits. So what they did was they took the 90 participants that had attended our trainings, and then they looked at 90 of other folks who have utilized our healthcare system but were using other means for either going to counseling, attending learning circles, and that's how they did the comparison with the group. And the focus group participants also reported that through FWWI trainings, they were able to heal and move beyond pain, grief, and shame. They described using FWWI skills to manage stress from difficult life events in order to stay stable. Some focus group participants reported that once they healed the pain of trauma and built coping skills, they were able to move away from unhealthy substance use.
Okay, so these are some of the participant quotes of people who attended our focus groups, and I'll just let you read them for yourselves. And for South Central Foundation employees, because our CEO and leadership believe in this program so much, employees could go through this training, this 5-day training, and they don't have to use personal leave to attend. The training is totally paid for and covered by SCF, and all the housing and meals are included. And the reason that they believe in it so much is not only what it does for them personally, but also how it helps the working relationships too. So if you're interested, we invite you to experience the training for yourself. You could visit southcentralfoundation.com and see some of our upcoming trainings. Maybe you know somebody that would benefit from a training like this, you could refer them to us. And then also, if you're also interested in learning how to safely facilitate small groups, we offer advanced leadership, or elite training. So this is some of the recognition that we received over the years. The one that stands out to me is on the bottom, 2009, FWWI was highlighted on a TV series as a national model for impacting men's health by the National Aboriginal Health Organization in Canada. And then also appreciation to our funders. We can't do what we do without all the different support that we get, everywhere from the DVPI and to state funding, even local organizations and churches who believe in this process and support us. So we really appreciate that. This is some of our contact information. And then, like I said, you could go to www.cal.cc/FWWI, and you could see our upcoming trainings, and you could also apply for a training online too. All right, so I wasn't sure if you normally open it up for Q&A time, but yeah, this will conclude our presentation, and thank you so much for inviting us.
Thank you, presenters, for presenting. It's always really difficult to tell your own stories, and I really appreciate the fact that you both shared your stories and made a difference. And I just want to say thank you. So for participants, if you have any questions for both the presenters, now's your time. There is a chat box on the left side. You can ask a question in the chat box if you're shy to ask the question verbally.
Yeah, for PowerPoints, I don't see any reason why, if you just want to, I don't know if they could provide it to you, or if you just want to put your email address and we could provide it as well. Okay, it looks like you could download the PowerPoint.
Yes, the PowerPoint can be downloaded. If you look to your far right corner at the bottom, you'll see South Central Foundation, FWWI_DVPI. So one question that I had for the presenters is the UD for ASHES training available for other DVPIs in the country that we fund, that they can use that?
So I just want to make sure I'm getting the question right. You're asking if another DVPI-funded program would be able to utilize the training materials and items that we use for our trainings, if they would be able to take that and use it?
Yes, ma'am, that's the question that I'm asking.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure I got the question right. I don't know why it would not be available, but we would probably ask to go through the same process as we do when we work with other regions, and that is to be invited by the tribal leaders who the DVPI funding resides under. And if we are formally invited, then we could look at bringing folks through for training and provide elite training as well. And then they would be able to take the training materials and adapt it to meet the needs in their area.
Thank you. And then I have another question. So I'm really glad that you provided that evaluation, the outcomes for that. So my question about that is the retention for program evaluation for the four baseline measures, you know, pre-training 6 months, and then the 12 months, and I forget the other one, but there was 4 areas that you mentioned. So in terms of recruitment and retention, how did you entice these individuals to come back and take those surveys? Because oftentimes that's difficult to capture when somebody doesn't return.
What we've done is, for anyone who is willing to complete a 6 and 12-month post-evaluation and mail them back, we actually send them out in self-addressed return envelopes, so it does not cost them anything to mail it back. If they're willing to take the time to fill out the survey and mail it back to them, we send them a $25 gift card, Visa gift card for their time.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So if there isn't any other questions, this is going to conclude the webinar session. Again, thank you, presenters, for presenting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, I was on the webinar, my DDPP webinar. was really good.